Now, let's get creepy. The United Kingdom, with its abandoned castles and ancient cemeteries, has been called the most haunted country in the world. But of all the spooky stories, it's a 30-year-old VHS tape that recently captured the world's attention. It's summer 1991 in Barnby Place, Bradford, UK. 15-year-old Adam Mawson has been using a camcorder to record his house when no one's home, in an effort to document some strange recent happenings. And on one of the tapes, Adam finds something frightening. Nothing seems amiss until a shadowy figure slowly begins to emerge from the chair. Look closely. It eventually rises and moves about the room, passing behind the door frame before returning and seemingly disappearing through the wall. Moments later, a second figure appears from the right and follows closely behind the other into the wall.
I was scared to death because I thought, what the hell is that? And that's when I showed my parents it, and my mum said, oh yeah, I've seen that before. I've seen it with her own eyes.
And to journalist Alexis Brooks, it sounds like a classic haunted house tale.
Barnby Place ranks among one of the most haunted places that I have ever seen. I mean, you're talking about disembodied voices, doors opening and closing on their own, and even what I would call a shadow person phenomenon.
Shadow people are described as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles. These shadowy creatures are sometimes interpreted as the presence of a spirit or other entity. Others believe these figures to be negative beings that can be repelled by various means, including invoking the name of Jesus.
I have seen and heard so many accounts of what we call the shadow person phenomenon. Many reports of shadow people include harassing an individual in their bedroom. So I would dare say that in addition to the more conventional haunting, we have what I would call a shadow person phenomenon going on in that home.
A figure often associated with shadow people is the Hat Man, a famous urban legend who wears a dark coat, a hat, and is unusually tall. Sometimes the figure is thought to be the devil himself. Adam's father still lives in the house on Barnby Place and says the activity has died down since he found religion. But that only seems to confirm that perhaps something spiritual was going on. Our experts take a closer look. First, we head to forensic video analyst Michael Primo for an authenticity check of this digitized copy.
We're not able to identify it as an actual ghost through forensic testing, but it could be the product of when the video was processed between the time that it was produced on tape to this digital version as some sort of artifact that is concealed as the object travels by. But is it CGI? Less likely.
So this footage probably wasn't manipulated intentionally, but how about accidentally?
These shadowy figures don't appear to be something that was introduced into the recording based on the artifacts that are present throughout its movement. And because we see these shadowy figures over several seconds in multiple instances, it's more likely something that actually happened in the video images.
So this recording itself may not have been manipulated, but we are not ready to declare this a ghost. We turn to physicist Dr. Matthew Shadagis, who suspects something shady.
What we're seeing here is this dark figure or shadow seeming to pass into the left wall and disappear, which would favor the ghost explanation. However, if you look very carefully over these few frames, there is some pixel darkening on the left that would seem to indicate that the shadow goes over the wall as we'd expect for a normal shadow being cast by someone off camera. It does not fully explain all the subtle motions we see, such as when the shape rises out of the chair, but it's the most plausible non-ghost explanation that I can come up with.
Primo disagrees and doesn't see any evidence that the shadow was created by someone off camera.
If the shadow was produced by the operator that's standing behind the camera, we would expect to see more of that cast off on the regions surrounding the doorway. But it's not produced over here on the right side of the image. These darker regions, being some sort of shadow is not really possible with the way that we don't see that information on the doorway.
So if we're ruling out shadows of someone off camera, could this truly be a ghost? Some say physics itself is all the proof you need of life after death, because the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. We bring that theory to Dr. Shadagis.
This is a misinterpretation of what conservation of energy means. The very notion of conservation of energy comes from energy changing form. And a great example of this energy exchange occurs after we have passed away and our body decomposes. Gases and other elements will feed the worms after we've died. Therefore, we cannot use an argument like conservation of energy from physics in order to prove or disprove life after death.
So, it seems current science still can't attest to the existence of ghosts. But as of now, we can't explain this video any other way. Our verdict? This video is a bona fide case of unexplained phenomena, over 30 years running. It's December 2021 in the suburbs of Akron, Ohio. 22-month-old Evelyn Witt, known as Evie, is in her high chair when her mom, Tana, hears something odd and starts filming.
Who are you talking to?
The video shows that no one else is in the room with little Evie, but she seems to be having a chat with an invisible uncle.
Who are you talking to?
Tana wonders if the toddler is saying the word uncle.
Who are you talking to? Evelyn. Who are you talking to?
That would make sense, since Tana's brother, Evie's Uncle Tim, lived at home with Evie's grandmother, Deborah Henley. She watches the little girl during the day.
When I would go to the park, he'd come with me, so he'd help me. He would take her on the swings and down the slide, and, you know, he was just a big part of her life.
What do you think?
Tragically, 1 month before Tana filmed her mysterious video, Uncle Tim died of an accidental drug overdose. So that begs the question, are we watching little Evie talking to Uncle Tim's ghost?
She talked a lot about Tim, and she would say things that I don't think that she knew as a young child.
Who else was happy?
Tim's happy.
Tim's happy?
Yeah.
She was talking to him. I'm almost sure of it.
Author Alexis Brooks suggests that young children potentially have a sixth sense and are actually able to see things that others aren't.
There's some theorists that say that babies can actually see beyond the visible spectrum of light. And it is said that the spirit world essentially lives outside of that visible spectrum.
In July 2021, another child went viral after he began talking to an invisible presence while his family was driving through California's Sierra National Forest. This apparent ghost sighting took place in an area where a woman named Sandra Johnson Hughes went missing a year earlier. And she looks just like how the boy described. There is another potential source of supernatural connection between children and the spirit world, the pineal gland, a little understood gland in the center of the brain that produces melatonin. It's been connected to the mystical third eye chakra of Eastern religions. Some claim children's pineal glands have not yet atrophied, which give them visibility into a broader spectrum of reality. But what is our experts' sense? First, we ask forensic video analyst Michael Primo to authenticate the footage.
The recording's structure was analyzed, and there is specific metadata in the file, which would have been produced from the original version. So there is no evidence to suggest that any kind of fabrication occurred with this interaction.
Who are you talking to?
So the video is authentic, but is Evie's apparent encounter with Uncle Tim? Can children really see things adults can't? Can children see outside the visible spectrum of light, as some have claimed? One 2018 study published by the University of Georgia showed young people can detect ultraviolet light down to a wavelength of 315 nanometers, much lower than the average middle-aged adult. Still, Dr. Ed Hope doubts this study explains what we're seeing here.
In general, children's vision is actually worse than our vision. In fact, when you're born, you only see black and white and have very limited vision. and this increases rapidly in the first 6 months. So there will still be some development with the eyes and vision at this age.
Theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku adds that Evie is also still developing her social skills and her understanding of object permanence. So, could she be chatting with an imaginary friend?
Sometimes their imaginary friends are confused with real ones. It won't be till around age 3 that a sense of what is real and not real becomes solidified in their mind, and realize that she's only 22 months old.
Who are you talking to?
Then what do our experts think is the cause of Evie's inexplicable interactions with Uncle Tim?
I think the most likely situation here is that Evelyn is mimicking behaviors of the family members around her. Going through a bereavement, kids are like sponges, and this is a way of Evelyn dealing with that situation.
Still, Evie continuously turns back and addresses the same exact spot in the room. Even Dr. Kaku cautions against jumping to conclusions.
Obviously, she has an emotional connection, but the key question is, to what? The danger is that we impose our understanding of life and death to children. Their understanding of life and death could be quite different from those of an adult. Maybe children can see another aspect of reality that we cannot see.
So this is a tough one, because we witnessed in real time Evelyn having conversations with an invisible or imaginary entity. For now, we're saying these interactions are unexplained. It's certainly possible Evie was just imagining her uncle was there, but we can't say that for sure, and the family is convinced that something more was going on. It's February 8th, 1993 in Long Island, New York. Pharmacist Gary Sudbrink has come all the way from Texas to visit his parents. A call comes through on the house landline. Gary answers it, and what he hears frightens him.
Is Gary Sudbrink there?
Huh?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
A raspy, mechanical voice speaks to Gary. The conversation is odd, with the person on the other end repeatedly asking,
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
I was just pretty much shocked, you know. About 7 seconds into the phone call, I decided to hit the record button on the answering machine because it was extremely unusual.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
By the other voice.
Gary would receive 2 more calls that evening and one the following day from the same mysterious voice. Each time it delivered a different, unsettling message. Gary says these couldn't have been wrong numbers or random prank calls because the voice knew personal information about him, like the fact he was visiting from Texas. He developed a theory that seems far out.
I had no idea who was calling me or what entity was calling, but it wasn't until a lot of time passed that I was thinking maybe Men in Black type thing.
MJ Banias is skeptical, but provides some background on the MIB.
UFO lore says that the Men in Black are this shadowy group of individuals who direct people to not discuss any strange encounters that they've had. They order them to stay quiet, and they threaten them with horrible acts of violence or death if they do start talking about the things that they've seen.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
More on Gary's connection to UFOs in a bit, but it's worth pointing out that the Men in Black legend originated in 1947 when a man named Harold Dahl allegedly saw a UFO on Maury Island, Washington. Dahl claimed a man in a black suit visited him days later and warned him not to discuss the sighting.
Beware government interference.
Now, Gary told us he has never seen a UFO, but his dad had years before, and the sighting had become family legend. Could that explain why the call came to his parents' landline? In the months following the mysterious phone calls, Gary sent his recordings to news channels and even a private investigator. But no one could identify what or who was calling. So can this case finally be cracked? Our experts answer the call. First, we asked military aviation expert Tim McMillan whether Gary could really have been contacted by the men in black.
Gary's footprint in there.
Nothing that I hear in the calls is suggestive of the men in black. My first impression is that the caller on the other line is actually using a pre-recorded message in its replies, because there doesn't seem to be the back and forth flow you would expect from any kind of conversation.
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
By the other voice.
Okay.
We took Gary's recordings to forensic audio analyst Dr. Rob Maher, and it turns out McMillan's instinct was spot on.
The interesting thing about the call is several of the utterances are repeated 4 or 5 times during that conversation, and they're not just repeated word for word, they're identical.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas? So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
It appears that the Men in Black remarks are pre-recorded and just played back several times. I took the alleged Men in Black voice and played it back at a faster rate, which restored the voice quality to what I would consider a normal speaking voice, normal pace of utterance, and normal pitch.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas? So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Sound familiar?
The voice quality is very reminiscent of Gary's voice.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
We can't get 100% accuracy out of that single recording, but my subjective determination is that Gary recorded this and played the voice back at a slower rate to make the deceptive Men in Black voice.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Unfortunately, voice comparison is not an exact science. Without more evidence, we can only say this is a possible hoax. We asked Gary for comment, and he insisted his tapes are authentic. But what do your ears tell you? Who do you believe? It's December 2008 in Savannah, and tourist Jesse Greathouse is visiting from Akron, Ohio with his family. He's playing with the family's new camcorder during their trip to historic Colonial Park Cemetery when he captures something that causes a social media uproar. As the footage rolls, we see Jesse zooming in and out around various gravestones and mausoleums, when off in the distance, a translucent child in white robes seems to appear. The apparition runs behind tombstones, jumps into a tree, and then drops back down to the ground before suddenly disappearing. It all happens pretty quickly, so let's take a closer look. Ignore the person walking by in the foreground and follow the bright white figure in the background moving quickly from right to left. You can barely catch him getting into the tree, but you can clearly see him jumping down before vanishing near someone pushing a stroller.
I was walking around and just filming, and this kid kind of like catches my eye just in the camera, and he was real fluorescent, kind of almost bright. So when we went to go watch it, it really just put in perspective that we do have something really significant here. To this day, it's almost like still like disbelief. Like, I can't believe I'm watching this.
Author Heidi Hollis, who writes about the supernatural, suggests this ghostly figure may have plenty of company.
700 people were victims of yellow fever, and they're buried in a mass grave there. So I think it's a possibility that the child that we're witnessing in this video was indeed a victim of yellow fever.
According to a historical marker, nearly 700 victims of the 1820 yellow fever epidemic were buried in a mass grave. But records allegedly show that exactly 666 people are buried in the cemetery, and the numbers were fudged so that nobody would associate the epidemic with the work of the devil. During the Civil War, the cemetery also served as a camp for Union soldiers who laid siege to the city.
When you think of the Civil War, so much death, so much destruction, that energy lingers in the air. Paranormal activity might indeed congregate in an area when something negative has happened. So it is a possibility the child that we're observing is a ghost still wandering here on this earth.
This video sends chills down my spine. Established in 1750, Colonial Park was the first public cemetery in Savannah. It also served for a time as the city's dueling grounds. During Sherman's march to the sea, it is believed Union soldiers desecrated and disturbed the grave sites. So this cemetery surely has some stories to tell. But what's the real story of this video? Let's summon the presence of our experts. Forensic video analyst Michael Primo takes a look to see if the video was doctored.
Typically, when evidence is manipulated intentionally, there are other indicators that we would detect through software tools, because the average consumer doesn't know how to conceal that information. No evidence of additional tools were detected or changes to the evidence drastic enough to warrant intent to deceive.
Physicist Dr. Matthew Shadagas examines the possibility that the image is a product of something called video ghosting.
Because this was on an analog tape, this is not the best image quality. What if something had been previously recorded, video of a child running around, that then got superimposed on a later video of the cemetery? That might explain the strange coloration of the childlike figure as simply some sort of echo or memory, not in the ghostly sense, but in the sense of a previous video on the same tape.
Shadagas also points out there are many other natural occurrences caught on camera that are often mistaken for ghosts.
Many things have been confused for ghosts in the past, things like lens flares or a speck of dust. Now, in this case, we have a very human-shaped figure, and that's why I don't think that lens flare or just a dusty atmosphere are the correct explanations this time.
So then could this actually be the figure of a ghost caught on tape?
I do not see any evidence here that this child is anything paranormal or out of the ordinary. I don't see any reactions from any of the bystanders as if something strange is happening. I think what we're seeing here is an ordinary, non-dead human child that's playing in a cemetery.
Okay, we agree with Shadagas that at first glance, this looks like it could be just an ordinary child, dressed in light-colored clothing. It's this moment right here that makes us have our doubts. Watch as the figure seems to shape-shift, then leaps into a nearby tree, and then falls to the ground. And no one seems to notice. Very strange.
We cannot confirm the authenticity of what that camera saw on that day. So the verdict for this case is inconclusive, and we would need additional information to be able to opine or identify specifically as to what that object is.
The verdict? This is possibly a living child. Shadagas' observation that the bystanders didn't react is telling, yet that unnatural movement at the end leaves us wondering. Meanwhile, Jesse remains adamant that this is a genuine ghost. So we leave it up to you to decide. It's been more than 160 years since the Battle of Gettysburg. Many believe this 3-day Civil War bloodbath left behind some of the most haunted ground in America. And this video may capture the proof. It's the evening of September 2nd, 2020 in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. A tourist who has asked not to be named is driving through the historic battlefield with his family. He suddenly starts hearing strange noises, and then history comes to life. A camera shooting through the windshield shows 2 cannons coming up on the right side of the road, when out of nowhere, a couple of human-like silhouettes flash into the frame. One appears and vanishes quickly, but the other stays in view for a whole 3 seconds before disappearing.
For these tourists who came to this area just to get a glimpse of the history, to catch a glimpse of the afterlife, I find to be extraordinary.
There may be a very simple explanation for these ghostly apparitions. Gettysburg was the single bloodiest battle of the Civil War, and these cannons from an unspecified part of the battlefield likely did their share of killing.
This plot of land is the bullseye. This is where it's happening, and I think this is what we were seeing in this footage right by those cannons. Ghostly apparitions.
Nearly a third of the soldiers who fought in Gettysburg were either wounded, killed, or reported missing after the battle. Brooks says eerie energy permeates the entire town to this day, and there have been regular alleged sightings of Civil War ghosts.
The Balladary Inn served as a Union field hospital. It has captured many, many images of ghostly remnants and apparitions around the area. Then there's the Daniel Lady Farm. Now this served as the Confederate field hospital. There are many accounts of ghostly apparitions that have shown up there.
So could these photos and our video show the souls of Civil War soldiers waiting in purgatory? Catholic miracle researcher Michael O'Neill says this Christian concept is like God's waiting room.
According to Catholic belief, those people whose souls aren't ready to meet God go through some time of purgation in which they're perfected and made ready to be in the beatific vision with God. There is no set time for purgatory. Some might make the argument that returning to the place of one's death is similar to the idea of working through purgatory on their way to heaven.
There are reports of haunted battlefields worldwide. In Japan, people still pray in a cave said to be haunted by villagers who were instructed by the army to die by mass suicide during the Battle of Okinawa in World War II. Yet, what's the story with the moving blurs back in Gettysburg? Let's let our experts shine a light on this one. First, physicist Dr. Matthew Shadagis examines if these wisps could be mini dust devils, swirling columns of dirt that, unlike tornadoes, form on clear weather days.
This appears to be a fairly grassy area, so I don't see any evidence that there's loose dirt or dust, and I don't see any evidence of wind elsewhere in the video.
Then what about the ghost theory? Forensic video analyst Michael Primo understands why some people see what looks like human apparitions.
As the video plays, you can sort of see this faint line that's running vertically here. And even at a certain point, it almost looks like you could identify a head and some sort of torso.
So Primo goes back in to take a closer look.
Adding a filter called Sobel in our enhancement tool, we can better see the lines within an image and thus shows the dark tone circular object more clearly. It appears that this was something that was recorded in front of the camera, and we can explain it as something on the windshield.
Primo concludes it's the perfect timing and positioning of what's likely a dead bug, a water droplet, or a bit of sap that brings this spooky scene to life.
The three components that contribute to the false interpretation of these images are the size of the objects, the timing as it travels past these cannons, as well as the direction, moving from the right to the left. They all kind of paint this picture that this ghost is running from this area where they had once lived into the roadway, and that's simply not the case.
Our verdict, conveniently placed window smudges. With that said, we still have no explanation for those mysterious noises the family heard at the start of this incident. So maybe there is more to this than meets the eye and the ear. It's September 2016 in Legazpi City in the Philippines. Grieving mother Joy Almares is attending the wake of her 7-year-old son Trebi, who has just died. Suddenly, a white balloon starts moving towards her from behind the coffin as if it has a life of its own. You can see from the video that the balloon gets all the way to Joy, and then, rather than moving past her, it suddenly stops. Now watch. It starts rubbing up against her as if in a caress, leaving the bereaved mother even more emotional.
I felt that he was there to comfort me because I was really crying that night. It's like he hugged me. And that's what I felt. I had goosebumps and I kept on crying out loud more because I felt him and I know that's him because he's like that when he's alive.
Joy believes this is a miraculous sign her son is sending from the other side, since he always had a special connection with balloons.
He really loved balloons since he was really small. Since it's a funeral, I thought it would be good if it's white. I thought of him as angel.
The idea that the mother feels intently that this child was communicating with her is known to research in parapsychology. There's a term called after-death communication, or ADC. There are a variety of ways in which these ADCs can occur, not the least of which are physical or symbolic ADCs.
According to Psychology Today, up to 3/4 of people grieving a loss report some form of after-death communication. This communication can include seeing the presence of a deceased person, smelling or hearing something associated with them, or, more indirectly, encountering a symbol or animal with some significance to their lives. 1/5 of these ADCs are backed by some sort of evidence, such as sensing a death before knowing it's happened, or multiple people sharing the same experience independently. So is this balloon really a sign from beyond, or is there some earthly explanation for what's happening? Let's ask the experts. Visual engineer and Catholic miracle historian Michael O'Neill has examined the video to assess its authenticity.
We selected this image because we have a variety of backgrounds, so we can see any kind of surface effects, edge effects, where we might see a blend if it was done imprecisely. We don't see a lot. Of course, a balloon is a three-dimensional object, so easy in a 3D modeling software to pick the light source of being off to the left-hand corner.
O'Neill detects no surface or edge effects, indicating the balloon was digitally added, but has it been physically manipulated?
One other possibility is that if this balloon were being dragged around the room, perhaps by strings at the top, strings at the side, strings to the back, strings out this way, and the pixels would be duplicated or dropped down to cover that string. We see no reflections here of any strings, so we assume that there are no strings.
Then could it simply be air currents that are moving the balloon through the room? Astrophysicist Dr. Hakeem Oluseyi admits that the balloon does seem to move somewhat erratically.
From what's visible, it doesn't seem like there is a really strong source of air current anyway, because if you look at the mother, you look at hair, you look at things other than the balloon, you don't see the effect of a wind that would make the balloon move at that velocity in that very directed way.
If it's not air movement, could static electricity be causing this effect?
You can imagine someone thinking, if I'm on the opposite side of a room from a balloon and my hair has the opposite electric charge, could I pull that balloon across the room to my hair? And the answer is a definite no. If there was that much static electricity built up between you and the balloon, you'd probably have a big lightning bolt between the two of them.
Oluseyi adds that larger objects store more energy during a buildup of static electricity, so a balloon's charge would be relatively weak. So we certainly can't rule out coincidence, a barely perceptible movement of air, plus some level of static attraction as the balloon gets closer to the mother. But it's open to interpretation.
The balloon is moving in a way that we would not expect. So that implies something is going on. My natural explanation would be, of course it's a fake, of course, but I can't prove it. Is it divine intervention? Is it somehow the soul hanging on for some extra time before going to heaven? Anything's possible.
And as for Joy,
that made me believe that there's so much more in this world. There's really spirits, and they're just here with us.
our verdict here, this is an unexplained phenomenon. Though there is a chance this is all staged, there's no proof of that from the forensics. And if a balloon can ease the suffering of a grieving mother, that just might be a miracle in itself. July 23rd, 2011, in a suburb just outside of Portland, Oregon, Thomas Collins hears strange noises emanating from an abandoned house on a property adjacent to his parents' home. He enlists a good friend to join him in his investigation.
This is Andrew.
When the two discover this,
There it is.
there's a high-pitched howl.
Be cautious.
My camera's having a really hard time picking this up.
Just wait.
As they enter the house, they see strange graffiti scrawled on the wall.
We have to make sure there's nothing in here.
They turn off the light. But curiosity gets the best of them.
Hear that? I think it's on the roof. The heck is that?
Shoot!
Christians.
Let's see that again. Zoomed in and slowed down.
We heard a noise, and that's when we turned and were able to spotlight that creature. But it scared us so much that we just ran. I didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me, but I felt like if it wanted to, it could. And so that was enough to give me a scare.
Although Thomas says he's been back to the property to investigate during daylight hours, he's never encountered the alleged creature again. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt helps us decipher what we just saw.
So this is a video that, for obvious reasons, has gotten a lot of action online. It's very creepy, very reminiscent to a mysterious creature known as the rake, a hairless humanoid creature standing about 6 feet tall, very cadaverous, gray, pallid skin, deep-set eyes. It's described as being very evil, terrorizing, even murdering people, particularly small children. Back in 1964, there was a gentleman who described this rake creature as having tormented him and driven him to the point to where he actually had to take his life.
Gerhardt also theorizes that it could be a fabled hairless being from Native American tales.
In the north central United States, we have tales of the Memagweshi, humanoid types of creatures, small in stature, but with large heads, large eyes, very malevolent and evil, very dangerous to humans.
Gerhardt suggests there may be another Native American myth connected to this. Dating back thousands of years, various American Indian tribes have spoken of extraterrestrial visitors they called star people, who bear a striking resemblance to the gray aliens often described in more modern-day alien abduction claims. Since this video was recorded in the wee hours of the night, whatever we're seeing here seems to have a sixth sense for thriving in darkness. You know, nocturnal predators such as owls, cats, and rodents have developed keen hearing, smell, and dark-adapted vision in order to navigate and hunt at night. To assess the actual threat level from this nocturnal creature, we turn to our experts. Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, weighs in on the Managishi claims.
I think that the most telling disqualification is the size. I mean, these are described consistently as little people. And my experience with indigenous populations here, that can be anything from 5 inches tall to 3 feet tall. But my impression was of a more human size being depicted in the video rather than a very small creature.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain has some insights into the Greys theory.
When people talk about the Greys, they usually bring up that there's little ones and there's big ones. And the larger ones have these very long necks and these big, large eyes. And this doesn't really look like that because their eyes are much smaller.
So if it isn't the Managishi or Greys, could it be the fearsome rake? Meldrum sees some red flags.
One thing that struck me about this video was the very orchestrated feel. I've never heard anyone say, "Be cautious."
Be cautious.
Which seemed extremely contrived. And the only characteristics that really are discernible are that it has a pale, high forehead and rounded skull. That could be a mask. And given the popularity of the rake image, there's no shortage of rake masks online.
Next, we bring in forensic video expert Michael Primo to analyze if this video could, in fact, be an elaborate hoax.
This doesn't appear to be anything that was essentially CGI'd or manufactured. The physical aspects of the scene kind of confirm that this appears to be something within this scene, but whether or not it's a paranormal creature, determinations about that simply can't be made from a forensic perspective.
But Primo isn't satisfied, and it doesn't take him long to find more corroborative evidence online.
Upon further investigating, I found evidence that supported that this particular person that created this video had some sort of IMDb profile, specifically in the genre of science fiction. It appears that this person does this professionally in some capacity to create videos like this. It's pretty clear cut here that these videos have been post-produced and they are fake.
Shoot! Shoot! Our verdict? We're calling it a hoax. The scripted feel of the video and the human-like size of the creature are the main giveaways. Though Thomas still swears the encounter was real, we can clearly say this isn't a rake. But abandoned sites still remain a hotbed of supernatural activity. So rest assured, we will continue to explore them.